Wow, Lori, thank you. I'm moved. And hearing that recap, it was a powerful week. And let me get situated here. Move that a little bit. All right, let's see if this is gonna work. So thanks everyone for having me. Lisa Patel, thank you for your service. Lori and Rob, Howie Frumpkin. I mean, there are so many people here who have made this work possible. So you all are my heroes because literally we couldn't do these cases without you. And truly the health of children is the heart of the story we tell in the courtroom. So the work you do in research and publishing, the work you do to just talk us through issues, the work you do keeping this alive in your communities and providing expert testimony, being friends of the court. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. It's all so vital. So many thanks to all of you for being here and coming together in community in this way. So I'm going to, if I can figure out what buttons to push on this computer, and I might need someone's help. I'm not sure how to advance. Thank you. And then just push that. Okay. All right. I think we've got it. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a personal journey of my own, and then take you into the really inspirational, transformative work that we're doing with youth. So I'm going to start, since we're talking about kids a lot today. This is actually Montana, but I grew up in Colorado, and my mom named me after Julia Anna Archibald Holmes, who was the first recorded woman to have climbed a 14,000-foot mountain that loomed really large over my childhood in Colorado Springs. And I also had the good fortune to grow up in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in Colorado, outside of a town called Westcliff, where there was a children's camp that my mom was a camp nurse at. And so by the time I was 6, I was climbing 13,000-foot peaks and going backpacking to high alpine lakes. And the joy of my youth was really centered in walking through cold creeks and playing capture the flag among aspen groves and bristlecone pines, and the breathing in of fresh alpine air, and sitting around campfires at night in community singing songs. So I was really blessed to not have any separation between me and the nature that nurtured me. And surrounded by the love of my mom and Mother Nature, I felt safe and I felt whole. And then I was 17, and I was sitting in the passenger seat of my friend's white Camaro in 1988 after seeing the Tom Hanks movie Big on the big screen. And a flash of bright white lights and the sound of gunfire ruptured my life. I was shot by a man, a stranger, with an AR-15, who fired multiple rounds of bullets into the car in which I sat, and into my chest and into my arm. And in the moments that followed, with this indescribable burning that takes over your body, there was also a calm as I gave directions to the emergency room where my mom worked as a flight nurse at that time. And as I tried to hold on to consciousness, and as I tried to conjure up the image of beautiful butterflies that my friend wanted me to think about as he pleaded with me to stay alive, not knowing whether I would live through the night. So there is life before being shot and life after, right? And my life and the security and safety I had was ruptured in a singular moment within an epidemic of gun violence. And it was very isolating. Nobody I knew could understand how to relate to me except for my neighbor, Roy, who had been a veteran from the Korean and Vietnam Wars and handed me his Purple Heart Medal. And he knew what that trauma would hold for me and the journey I would go on to integrate it into my life. And he was right. It's been a journey through fear, anger, loneliness, PTSD, but also a journey into gratitude for being alive and gratitude for what it enlivened in me. Gratitude for family and friends, for healing and recovery, and gratitude for the additional 35 years I've been able to continue to walk the earth and climb mountains and give and receive love. So there are moments in our life where we decide what we want to do with this one wild and precious life, to quote Mary Oliver, one of my favorite poets. And we decide what we care about enough and love about enough that we will dedicate our time, our emotional energy, our resources to work on that thing and not give up, even when there are struggles, even when there are obstacles that arise, right? We keep going and we do it. And so fast forward, almost 20 years ago, I became a mother. And when I was 8 months pregnant with my youngest son, I watched An Inconvenient Truth, and tears rolled down my face for 2 hours. But those tears transformed to action, because when I looked, oh, and I need to show you my babies. Okay. When I looked in their beautiful eyes filled with innocence and curiosity, I knew I would use everything in my power, including my law degree and my life experience, to help create a safe world for them and for all children to come from the threat of climate destabilization and the ravages of fossil fuel pollution. And in my life, I am guided by love, not retribution. So when I took the stand at my shooter's sentencing when I was 17, I asked the judge to take away his guns and to find him the mental health treatment that he needed to never hurt another. And that judge listened to a youth, to me. Thank you. So today I am a human rights lawyer, and I have the deep honor of representing children who are fighting for their safety and their security and their right to a life-sustaining climate system. And while we've had a lot of youth-led social justice movements, especially in this country, the youth lead all the good things, right? We haven't, as a nation, lived and legislated by the idea that if we protect the children in our communities, then we can protect everything else that we love. If we protect the inheritance of generations to come, we can protect everything else that we love. And while our democracy seems really fragile and sometimes broken these days, we are still lucky to live in a thriving democracy. Though far too many children will come face to face with a gunman. Not all of them will, like I did. But as you all know, and what you've been talking about today, every single child born in the 21st century will have to deal with the legacy of climate crisis and what we do today about it. It's really, I think of it as the climate gun pointed at every single one of them. And I am not doing a good job with the slides, so we'll just skip. There's Lisa Patel's amazing quote. You can read it. So I know what it is to have your safety and your security and the promise of your future threatened or take it from you. I also know how to take it back. And I know how to activate our judicial system as a powerful vehicle to shape what our democracy delivers for our youth who have no vote. They have no vote. And just as a side note, we read an amicus brief in the Supreme Court in Trump v. Anderson, and there were 74 million people who voted for President Trump in 2020. There are 74 million children under the age of 18 who cannot vote in this country. Oh, I'm going the wrong way, sorry. So I founded our Children's Trust on this idea that courts are vital to our democracy and they're empowered to protect children and the planet they live on. So we are standing alongside youth and we advocate on their behalf, but we stand with them and we help elevate their voices so that they can lead. We use only science-based arguments. We're seeking systemic remedies, and we are fundamentally protecting human rights in the work that we do. So today, we've talked, I've heard a lot of talk about the fossil fuel industry and big oil as the Goliath, but I would suggest to you all that yes, they are a Goliath and they are important to target, but there's a bigger Goliath, and it is your government that gives license to big oil and the fossil fuel industry to harm every single one of you and your children. They can't do it without the government's permission. And only the government, not the fossil fuel industry, has constitutional obligations to children and to all of you, right? And so we sue governments for allowing all of this to happen. And since Lori did such a beautiful job of describing the Held versus Montana case, I'll just add a couple of anecdotes. This is Sariel on the left. She's Indigenous. She took the stand and testified about the changes in the snowpack and where the snow is falling and the inability of the elders to pass down the creation stories of her tribe because the snow isn't falling in the places that are sacred where they traditionally tell those stories. Grace on the upper right, she's an athlete, a soccer player. She was the one that Lori mentioned, talked about the pain of watching the glaciers melt in Alaska. And she described the heat and the smoke and the inability to be outside. Badge also, they all talked about the smoke season that has replaced the best part of summer just in their short lifetimes. These are the 10 experts who just beautifully took the stand and told such powerful stories, from climate scientists to energy transition experts, to fossil fuel accounting experts, and of course our medical experts, of which Dr. Byron was one. And I just wanted to point out 4 really important conclusions that Lori presented to the judge through really wonderful testimony over several hours. And one is that the health and well-being of the plaintiffs now and in the future it's already put at risk by Montana's fossil fuel practices and system, and that reducing air pollution today matters, as well as reducing the climate impacts, in the future. That health is already harmed. So this is a drumbeat. It's really important, and I was glad to hear it today, that these health harms are happening today. They're not in the future, because a lot of people think, oh, it's a future problem, but it's already with us. And that we can't just treat our way out of these problems. We can't fully adapt our way out of what's coming. We have to deal with the underlying causes. And the best medical intervention is to stop burning fossil fuels. I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip that and the smoke impacts. This literature, again, it's so important because we have to bring this kind of evidence into court. So showing that a child born today, there's active discrimination happening against kids, right? Because a child born today will experience, according to this literature, a 2 to 7-fold increase in these extreme weather events. And it's probably even going to be worse than that if we don't change things. And then the mental health testimony. Every single young person I represent has some level of anxiety, climate anxiety, depression, other issues, not to mention the lost days of school they suffer from, the destroyed homes that they have, the displacement, all of that. So really important testimony. So based on all this testimony, so a judge makes findings of fact. That's what the trial is for. And then the legal conclusions follow from that. So the court found that the youth had proven that they are disproportionately harmed and that their injuries rise to a constitutional violation level. She also really importantly found that every additional ton of greenhouse gas pollution exacerbates constitutional injuries and locks in irreversible injuries. So one thing I just want to talk about quickly is the safe zone. So judges are going to ask these questions. What is safe for children? What prevents them from having constitutional injuries to their bodies, right? And to their personal security. And so we bring climate scientists in to talk about that. And medical expertise is also very relevant. This is, hopefully you've all seen the Keeling curve. You know, we're at about between 420, 422 parts per million of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Temperature is not the determinant. It's CO2. So if you think about so you're all medical, right? So if you think about a range for blood sugar levels, if you think about a range for cholesterol, if you think about a range for these things that cause harm, we need to think about a range for carbon dioxide in the air that is safe for humanity. What's the safe zone? Well, what's really amazing for me as a lawyer, there's huge consensus around this, and it's the number 350 parts per million, which means we need to bring CO2 levels down by stop putting more up there. And 1.5 degrees Celsius, it's not a safe standard. It was a politically negotiated target in the Paris Agreement, and it's hotter than we're at today. So in none of our cases do we advocate for a 1.5 C standard for courts, because that would be catastrophic for children to live in a world that was that hot. All right, I've already said that, so I'm going to show you that fabulous picture. The win was amazing, and we have to hold on to it in the Montana Supreme Court. And we have a really good shot at that. So I want you to feel hopeful about that. And we can use your help. So when we go up on appeal, we often use friend of the court briefs or amicus curiae briefs. And we've had many of you participate in medical friend of the court briefs in our Juliana litigation that I'll mention in a minute. And right now there's an opportunity to participate in Montana. So I know Lori Byron is helping with that. You can contact Susan at ourchildrenstrust.org. And is Elizabeth in here? Right back there. Elizabeth, thank you so much for helping work on that. So please get involved with that if you're interested. So I'm going to speak about just a few more cases before I let you all socialize and enjoy the rest of your evening or go watch the Super Bowl. So these plaintiffs, almost 9 years have they been in litigation against the US federal government. And the reason it's been 9 years is that every administration from Obama to Biden has tried to stop them from being heard, as the Montana youth were just heard last summer. And they're still trying to stop them. And like the Montana youth, the courts from the district court to the Court of Appeals have all acknowledged that these youth have exacerbated medical conditions. This is Isaac and Tia. They both have asthma and they live in the West. They've suffered damage to property with flooding. They have psychological harm. And the courts have across the board said the government is causing that harm. And the one thing that we got hung up on for a little bit was that the court said, but we can't do anything. So we're back to the district court right now. And just 2 weeks ago, we thought we were going to get our trial date. And then the Biden administration and the Department of Justice said, oh no, we're going back up to the Ninth Circuit on this really extreme process. It's called a petition for writ of mandamus. You don't have to remember that. But what you should know about it is that of the 40,000 cases in which the Department of Justice is a defendant when plaintiffs sue the government, 40,000 cases, they are using this tactic in one case. And you want to guess how many times they've used this tactic in our case? 7. There are 40,000 cases right now that DOJ is defending the United States, and this is their 7th time using this tactic, and they're not using it in any other case in the United States because they do not want the evidence to come out in a court of law in a trial that would be so damning to the federal government. And so, and this has gone back. These are lawyers that used to work on the case under the Trump administration. And that's what they said. Their number one priority from day one was to kill Juliana versus US. And it's only to protect the fossil fuel industry. So our youth they're stepping up. This is MECO. They're filing what are called declarations in the court tomorrow. I have a brief due tomorrow. So I'm a little tired. And we're trying to stop this stay of the case. And, you know, MECO is talking about the anxiety that is perpetuated, the institutional betrayal that keeps coming at them as the climate crisis worsens. This is Levi. He's now 16 and his voice is lowered. And but that was when he was younger. And he wrote to the court in a filing we'll submit tomorrow that the truth is he's been displaced by climate change from my home and my community and the beach and ocean that are part of who I am. He lived on a barrier island off of Florida and can't live there anymore. So to, you know, get involved and learn more, please join our mailing list. You'll get updates and find out when important moments are that you can get involved. And then I'm going to just share. Oh, sorry. Yep. Oh, I love all those phones. Good. I can put it back up at the end. Or you can go to our website, ourchildrenstrust.org. So we are in litigation around the country. So a couple flags for you all. So for those in Richmond, Virginia, March 12th, 2024, we will be arguing in the Court of Appeals in a case, Layla H. These are our Virginia plaintiffs going after the fossil fuel infrastructure that keeps being approved in Virginia. These are my new clients in California who are suing the US EPA. So the panel earlier today, our case is precisely about what they were talking about. Under the EPA's authority over the last 50 years, they're the only agency responsible in the federal government for controlling air and water pollution. And for 50 years, they have allowed, permitted every bit of the pollution that's happening that's causing climate change. Every bit of it gets permitted by the EPA. So these youth are taking on the EPA in an equal protection case under the Fifth Amendment of the US Constitution to protect their right to a life-sustaining climate. These are our Utah plaintiffs. They're going up to the Utah Supreme Court this spring or summer. We don't have a date yet. And then really exciting, second ever constitutional climate trial will happen this summer in Honolulu. It starts June 24th against the state of Hawaii. And Hawaii is different because they have amazing climate targets. They say they're going to get off of fossil fuels by 2045. But their transportation emissions, which is the biggest sector of emissions, those are going up. And they have no plan to bring them down. So we're going after the transportation system in Hawaii and have a great team of experts, including both Western and Indigenous experts on the medical and mental health side of things. So we represent a lot of Native Hawaiians. So we're bringing in that Indigenous knowledge in terms of both the cultural impacts, but also the physical health impacts as well. And I'm sure I'm way out of time. So this is Kala. She's one of our plaintiffs. You're not seeing her right now, but this is her quote from Hawaii. She says, "Use your voice and share your perspective. that's a way to make a difference. You never know how much you're going to impact another person. So I wanted to share that. And if you're inspired, we get all this pro bono help from our experts. We couldn't do it without them. And we have expensive trial bills. So if you want to join us and contribute, we would welcome it. And with that, thank you all so very much. Okay, so Robin wants me to share why it matters to sign on to an amicus brief. So I think it's what you all been talking about today. You are trusted voices. And so when courts look at things, one, they're humans, right? Like a court is not some magical thing that can do things objectively. I think we all know that about the Supreme Court now. And so voices matter. So they have a great record. They have all the law they need, but we will be getting briefs from like the business community and the faith community, and the medical community is really important because the health implications of climate change does resonate across all, party lines. It resonates across, young and old. And so having more people weighing in and having the organizations that represent, thousands and hundreds of thousands of medical providers is also really important. So associations, all your big institutions, if they will join, it's really important. And also having individual support is wonderful. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.